The grand ballroom glittered like a sea of stars. Crystal chandeliers hung from the high ceilings, scattering light across golden walls and polished marble floors. The sound of laughter, clinking glasses, and soft music filled the air. Every guest seemed alive with excitement, moving through the crowd in glittering gowns and tailored suits. Yet, in the corner of the room, far from the swirl of celebration, sat Isolde. She was alone. A delicate figure in a deep navy gown, her dark hair cascading over her shoulders. Isolde wrapped herself in the solitude she had carried for years. She had received the invitation out of courtesy, or perhaps obligation. But the reality of the event made her feel like an intruder in a world she no longer belonged to. The laughter around her was like a language she could not understand, every smile a reminder that she was invisible. Her hands rested lightly on the tablecloth, fingers tracing the intricate patterns as she watched the couple at the center of attention. The bride was radiant, a vision of perfection in white silk, her laughter echoing as she twirled beneath the gaze of the guests. The groom, proud and confident, held her hand with a gentle possessiveness. Around them, the world seemed to shine. Around Isolde, it seemed dim. She had chosen this seat carefully. A place where she could see everything, yet be seen by no one. Her heart, usually steady, fluttered with an anxious rhythm she tried to ignore. Memories of past betrayals whispered at the edges of her mind, reminding her why she had learned to stay in the shadows. She had been hurt, used, and misunderstood before. Tonight, she would observe, but she would not belong. And then, the air shifted. A presence approached, silent but undeniable. The crowd seemed to bend around him as if parting for a force of nature. Arendor Vance, known to some as a powerful CEO, to others as a man with dangerous influence, walked with an unshakable confidence. His dark eyes scanned the room, sharp and calculating, until they landed on Isolde. He stopped beside her table. The music seemed to dim in his presence. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and impeccably dressed. There was a quiet danger in the way he moved, a sense that he could command the entire room with a single glance. Yet, as he looked at her, there was something softer behind the intensity, a curiosity, a recognition. "Is this seat taken?" His voice was low, smooth, carrying authority without demand. Isolde looked up, startled, and met his gaze. For a moment, she saw nothing but dark eyes that seemed to see straight into her, past the cloak of isolation she had built around herself. She shook her head slightly, uncertain how to respond. "Good," he said, sliding a chair out and sitting down across from her. Not many people have the courage or perhaps the sense to stay in the shadows at such an event. Isolde's lips pressed together. She wasn't used to attention, especially not the kind that made her feel noticed without fear or judgment. "I prefer observing," she said softly, almost as if speaking too loudly would shatter the fragile bubble she had created. Arendor's smile was faint, enigmatic. Observing can be lonely. Sometimes, even the strongest observers need an ally. Before she could respond, a hush fell over the ballroom. A whisper spread among the guests, and heads turned toward the center. A minor scandal, perhaps a misplaced accusation or a secret revealed, had surfaced. The crowd murmured, a mix of curiosity and alarm. Arendor's hand brushed against hers as he leaned slightly closer, his presence grounding her in a way she hadn't expected. "Pretend you're with me," he whispered, low enough for only her to hear. His words were firm, commanding, yet carried a subtle invitation. The strange warmth in his tone stirred something unfamiliar in her chest trust, or perhaps curiosity. Isolde's mind raced. She didn't know him, and yet something in his calm assurance made her hesitate. To be with him, even just pretending, felt like stepping into unknown territory, a place where danger and safety danced together. But the alternative, sitting alone, while the world moved on, felt unbearable. Slowly, she nodded. Not a word, only a quiet motion of agreement. Arendor's hand lingered near hers, an unspoken promise of protection. He didn't smother or claim. He simply existed beside her, a presence that radiated both strength and care. As they moved through the crowd together, Arendor's grip on her wrist was gentle but insistent. Whispers followed them, not all of them kind. People speculated about her connection to him, her past, her intentions. But Isolde found herself no longer caring. For the first time in a long while, she felt seen. Not as a shadow or a memory of past mistakes, but as someone real. Someone present. They stopped near a balcony, where moonlight spilled over the ornate railing. Below, the garden glimmered with fountains and lanterns, a silver mirror reflecting the night sky. Isolde drew in a breath, feeling the weight of the evening press against her chest. She had spent so long protecting herself that she had almost forgotten how it felt to trust someone even briefly. Arendor watched her closely, sensing the hesitation. "You don't have to say anything," he murmured. "Just stay close. Tonight isn't safe for those who wander alone." She looked at him, eyes wide, heart pounding. Why me?" she asked, her voice barely audible. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he offered a rare, fleeting smile, one that hinted at vulnerability beneath the layers of power and control. "Because I see you," he said finally. "Not as others do, not as someone to be judged. Just as you." Isolde felt a strange warmth bloom in her chest, a fragile hope that perhaps she had been invisible only by choice. But the world outside the ballroom, she knew, was not so kind. Secrets could ruin lives, and tonight's whispers were only the beginning. Suddenly, a commotion erupted near the entrance. A figure from Arendor's past, someone known for vindictive schemes, had arrived unexpectedly. The energy in the room shifted, a subtle tension threading through the music and laughter. Arendor's jaw tightened, and his hand moved instinctively to brush against hers, not demanding, but protective. Isolde's pulse quickened. This was no longer just a night of observation. She had been pulled into something larger, a storm she could not ignore. And yet, she did not pull away. Instead, she allowed herself to be guided, to walk beside him, the echo of his whispered words anchoring her. "Pretend you're with me." The night pressed on, the scandal unfolding with quiet intensity. Guests whispered, glances were cast, and eyes followed them through the crowd. For the first time in years, Isolde felt a thrill of life beyond mere survival. A sense that her choices, her presence, mattered, but danger lingered at the edges, unseen yet palpable. Arendor's eyes scanned the room constantly, a predator, aware of every shadow, every movement. And though he said nothing more, the silent message was clear. Stay close, and you may survive the night. Step away, and the consequences could be severe. As the music swelled, and the guests raised their glasses in a toast, Isolde felt a strange mix of fear and anticipation. She had chosen to step into his world, to accept his protection, even if only for the evening. And in doing so, she had unknowingly stepped onto a path from which there might be no return. Her gaze met Arendor's once more, and in that brief, electric moment, she saw the duality of his nature, power, and tenderness, danger, and care. The tension between them was undeniable, unspoken, yet simmering like coals beneath snow. The first part of the evening drew to a close with the crowd's attention shifting back to the bride and groom. But for Isolde, the real night was just beginning. Arendor leaned closer, his breath warm against her ear, as he whispered again, the words carrying weight, promise, and warning. Stay close. You'll need me tonight. And as Isolde nodded, uncertain but resolute, she realized she no longer wished to hide in the shadows. Not with him there. The chandeliers above flickered once, casting long shadows that danced across the marble floor. Somewhere in the distance, A hidden danger stirred. Watching. Waiting. And though Isolde could not yet see it, she knew the night would test more than her courage, it would test her heart. The ballroom's glow flickered, but the warmth of the chandeliers could not reach the corners of tension that now lingered over Isolde and Arendor. The shadowed figure at the entrance moved with deliberate purpose, eyes scanning the crowd as if searching for something, or someone. Arendor's posture shifted subtly, his protective instincts sharpening. His hand brushed against Isolde's once more, a silent reminder to stay close. Isolde's pulse quickened. She was no longer a mere observer. She was part of something dangerous, something bigger than herself. Yet, amid the fear, a strange exhilaration surged through her. The night had shifted, and with it, a connection between her and Arendor began to deepen. There was trust in his presence, even as the tension pulled tight around them. The shadowed figure, a man in a dark suit with a reputation whispered through boardrooms and courtrooms, moved toward the center of the room. Rumors of past betrayals and business intrigues followed him like a cloak. Arendor's eyes flicked to him, a silent calculation forming behind his calm exterior. He did not speak, but the tension in his shoulders told Isolde more than words ever could. "Who is he?" she asked softly, voice barely rising above the music. "Trouble," Arendor replied, his gaze fixed. "A man who thinks power gives him the right to destroy anyone in his path." Isolde felt a shiver pass through her. The thought that danger could reach across this glittering ballroom, through the crowd, to them, made her aware of every heartbeat, every breath. She wanted to look away, to hide behind her anonymity, but she could not. Not when he was near. His presence, a tether, keeping her anchored in the storm. The mysterious man stopped, his eyes meeting Arendor's for a tense moment. There was recognition there, a history unspoken but charged with consequences. He raised his glass as if to toast something unseen, a subtle act that carried the weight of challenge. Guests nearby glanced, sensing the undercurrent of power and danger, though they could not see the invisible threads binding these three figures together. Arendor's jaw tightened. "Stay with me," he murmured, his hand lightly guiding her closer as he maneuvered through the crowd. "Do not leave my side. He won't respect distance." Isolde nodded, the warmth of his hand a strange comfort. She realized, as they moved through the crowd, that she had been unaccustomed to such attention, to someone caring so deeply for her safety, without expecting anything in return. Her usual instinct to hide wavered. She wanted to stay, to trust, even as her mind warned her against it. They reached the balcony, the moonlight spilling over the railing, illuminating the garden below. The night was calm here, a stark contrast to the tension inside. Isolde took a deep breath, letting the cool air soothe her. Yet the sense of impending danger remained. "Why protect me?" she asked quietly. "I don't belong in this world of power and influence." Arendor looked at her, the shadow of a smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "You belong wherever you choose to stand," he said, his voice steady and unwavering. "No one gets to decide your place but you." She felt something in her chest loosen, a knot of fear and doubt she had carried for years. He did not just see her. He acknowledged her agency, her strength, even when she doubted herself. For the first time in a long time, she felt the possibility of being more than a spectator in her own life. But the calm did not last. From the ballroom, the tension pulsed outward, like a living thing. The man from the entrance had begun to move again, weaving through guests with the precision of someone who knew every secret passage, every whispered rumor. Arendor's grip on her hand tightened, a silent warning. "We need to leave the open space," he said, voice low. They moved through a corridor adjoining the ballroom, dimly lit by torches. The walls were adorned with portraits of long-dead ancestors, their eyes seeming to follow every step. Isolde felt the weight of history pressing down, a reminder that power and danger were intertwined in ways she had not fully understood. Yet she stayed close, walking beside Arendor, her nerves electric with a mixture of fear and anticipation. "Do you always carry danger with you?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Danger finds me," he replied, not meeting her eyes immediately. "And sometimes, it finds those who are near me." His honesty was both frightening and comforting. She realized that being near him meant she could not remain passive. She would have to act, to engage, to match his alertness. And something in her stirred a spark of courage she had not felt in years. They paused near a small library, the door slightly ajar. Arendor gestured for her to enter. Inside, the soft glow of candlelight illuminated shelves filled with books that smelled of old paper and secrets. It was quiet here, a sanctuary amid the storm. "You're safe. For now," he said, his hand brushing hers as he closed the door behind them. "But he won't stop until he gets what he wants." Isolde's heart pounded. What does he want? "Control," Arendor said. "Power. Revenge. The kind that doesn't care who gets hurt along the way." She nodded, understanding more than she wanted to. This was not just a simple scandal. It was a test of strategy, courage, and loyalty. And somehow, she was caught in the middle. They stood in silence for a moment, the candlelight flickering across Arendor's face. She noticed the tension in his jaw, the slight tightening around his eyes, a glimpse behind the mask of power. He was formidable, yes, but he was also human, capable of doubt and vulnerability. And in that moment, she felt a strange pull toward him, a recognition of shared burdens and unspoken pain. "We can't stay hidden forever," he said suddenly, voice low. "We need to face him. Together." Her breath caught. The idea of confronting danger, of standing beside someone so formidable, was terrifying but also exhilarating. She felt alive in a way she hadn't in years. Her senses sharpened, her courage rising with every heartbeat. As they stepped back toward the balcony, the music from the ballroom seemed distant, almost unreal. The shadowed figure had drawn closer, and the air seemed charged with tension, every guest a silent witness to the unfolding power struggle. Arendor guided her to a corner of the balcony, where moonlight glinted off the marble railing. He leaned close, his voice a whisper meant only for her. "Tonight, you are not alone. I will not let him." He stopped, eyes flicking toward the ballroom, where the man was now watching them. "Or anyone harm you. But you have to trust me. Fully." Isolde's chest tightened. Trust was not easy for her. She had been betrayed, dismissed, and overlooked for too long. Yet, as she looked into Arendor's eyes, she saw sincerity, strength, and an unexpected warmth. Slowly, she nodded, the weight of her fears lifting slightly. "I trust you," she whispered. He smiled faintly, a rare softness breaking through his usual control. "Good," he said, "because tonight is only the beginning. The real test is yet to come." The words carried a chill. Isolde sensed that the events of the evening were far from over, that danger and intrigue would follow them long after the chandeliers dimmed. Yet, despite the fear, a strange thrill coursed through her veins. She was no longer a passive guest. She was a participant, an ally, a force to be reckoned with. And for the first time in a long while, she felt alive. From the ballroom, the shadowed man moved closer, his intentions clear, his gaze fixed on them. Arendor's hand found hers again, a firm but gentle grip, and he whispered, "Stay with me. Whatever happens next, we face it together." Isolde's heart raced, not just with fear, but with something deeper, something she could not name. There was danger ahead, yes, but there was also a connection, a promise, a tension that made her feel alive in a way she had never experienced. The moonlight glinted off the balcony, casting long shadows that danced across the marble floor. The night, once merely a backdrop to a wedding, had become a stage for secrets, power, and desire. And at the center of it, Isolde and Arendor stood together, poised between fear and trust, darkness and possibility. As a distant clock tolled, signaling the passage of the evening, the shadowed figure in the ballroom made a decisive move. The music seemed to falter. The crowd's laughter, a distant echo. Isolde felt the surge of tension tighten like a cord around her chest. Arendor leaned close once more, his voice barely audible over the night wind. "This is the moment. Stand with me, or be swept aside." Her hand met his, fingers entwining naturally. She felt a surge of determination, a willingness to face whatever storm awaited. And as the shadowed figure finally stepped forward, making his way toward them, Isolde realized that there was no turning back. The night had claimed her, and in its dark, twisting embrace, she had found something unexpected: courage, trust, and the first flicker of desire. The shadowed man's steps echoed ominously across the marble floor of the ballroom below, each footfall carrying the weight of intent and threat. Arendor's hand held Isolde's tightly, his eyes scanning every corner of the grand hall, reading every subtle movement. For a moment, the world felt suspended between heartbeats, a delicate balance of danger and trust, fear and anticipation. "Stay behind me," Arendor murmured, his voice low, carrying both command and reassurance. "No one harms you tonight." Isolde felt the warmth of his hand, the strength in his presence, and something within her stirred. She had spent so long hiding, so long fearing exposure, that the idea of standing beside someone so powerful was both frightening and exhilarating. Her chest rose and fell, steadying herself. She would not falter, not now. The man approached the balcony, his expression unreadable but his eyes sharp. It was clear he recognized the connection between them, the unspoken bond forged in moments of shared danger. Arendor's jaw tightened as he subtly stepped forward, positioning himself between Isolde and the approaching threat. "Arendor Vance," the man said, his tone cold and precise. "I should have known you would be here, dragging someone into your games." Arendor's gaze did not waver. "You underestimate her," he said, motioning toward Isolde. "And that will be your mistake." The shadowed man's eyes flicked toward Isolde, narrowing slightly. For a brief second, she felt the chill of scrutiny, but instead of fear, a resolve bloomed. She had walked in the shadows long enough. Tonight, she would stand in the light, standing beside Arendor, rather than behind him. "You've been underestimating people all night," Isolde said quietly, her voice calm but firm. "Don't forget me." The man paused, surprise flickering across his features, before his expression hardened. Arendor gave her hand a reassuring squeeze. "Good," he said softly. "That's the courage I wanted to see." With a subtle gesture, Arendor signaled her to move closer. Together, they stepped toward the balcony's edge, the garden below glimmering like silver under the moonlight. It was open ground, exposed, and yet, in that moment, Isolde felt less fear than she had ever felt in a room full of people. Here, with him, she felt alive. The confrontation was silent at first, a dance of glances and subtle moves. The man did not advance recklessly. He tested, probing for weakness. Arendor's every motion was calculated, deliberate, a shield and a challenge at once. Isolde mirrored his composure, her presence unexpected, her confidence unspoken but unmistakable. "You've changed," the man said finally, his tone sharp. "She's changed you. You're not the same as you were when we last met." Arendor's lips curved slightly, almost imperceptibly. Isolde's heart quickened as the tension escalated. She could see the undercurrent of history, the grudges and betrayals that had shaped this encounter. And yet, amid the danger, there was clarity. Every moment, every choice, every risk had led her here not just to this confrontation, but to a truth she could not deny. She trusted him, and in that trust, she felt an unfamiliar strength. The shadowed man moved suddenly, a swift step forward meant to intimidate. But Arendor's hand was already at her shoulder, steadying her, guiding her out of harm's way. They moved as one. A silent unity that spoke louder than words. Isolde's confidence grew with each moment. A realization dawning. She was not merely a passenger in this story. She was part of the strategy, part of the force. And then, the unexpected happened. A misstep. A glance. And the man's footing faltered near the balcony's edge. He stumbled slightly, eyes wide with shock, giving Arendor the moment he needed. In a swift, precise motion, Arendor blocked him, his hand firm on the man's chest, holding him at bay. Isolde watched, awe and fear mingling, as the balance of power shifted. "You see?" Arendor whispered to her, not letting go of her hand. "Strength comes from standing together." Isolde nodded, her pulse steadying. The danger was real, but so was the connection between them. She realized that her fears, her doubts, her years of isolation, had no power here, not when she chose to stand beside him. The man regained his composure, a final flicker of anger passing through his gaze. He seemed to understand, finally, that the bond between Arendor and Isolde was unbreakable, forged not in convenience, but in courage, trust, and quiet determination. With a reluctant nod, he stepped back, fading into the shadows of the ballroom, leaving the two of them standing on the balcony, their hearts still racing. For a moment, silence settled. The music in the ballroom had shifted, softer now, almost intimate. Arendor turned to Isolde, his expression softer than it had been all night, yet still imbued with power. "You were incredible," he said quietly, his thumb brushing against the back of her hand. "I don't say that lightly." Isolde felt warmth spread through her chest. I wasn't afraid," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly, not from fear but from the intensity of the night. "Because you were there." Arendor's eyes softened, a rare vulnerability breaking through. "And I will be," he said, his tone firm, almost solemn. "Not just tonight, not just in danger. I will be there whenever you need me, whether you realize it or not." Her chest tightened with something she could not name: relief, awe, and something deeper. For so long, she had walked alone, relying only on herself. Now, she understood that trusting someone did not mean weakness. It meant strength, a willingness to share burdens and face the world together. The moonlight spilled over them, bathing the balcony in silver. Isolde turned to look at the garden below, the fountains glittering, the night alive with possibility. She felt a shift inside her, a transformation she hadn't anticipated. Fear had been replaced with courage, doubt with resolve, isolation with connection. "You saved more than me tonight," she said softly. "You reminded me I can stand, that I can fight and survive." Arendor's gaze held hers, unflinching. "And you reminded me why it's worth protecting someone. Not because they need saving, but because they choose to stand beside you." The words hung in the air, a quiet testament to the bond forged in a single night of danger and revelation. And in that moment, the past, the betrayals, the secrets, the shadows of loneliness felt distant, almost irrelevant. What mattered was here, now, with each other. A gentle breeze swept across the balcony, carrying the distant sounds of celebration and the faint murmurs of intrigue. For the first time that night, Isolde felt a sense of peace, fragile but real. She was not alone. She was not invisible. She was part of something greater, a story larger than herself, shared with someone who saw her fully and still chose to stand beside her. Arendor's hand found hers again, holding it with quiet assurance. "Tonight may have been chaos," he said softly, "but it also revealed truth. And truths, once seen, cannot be unseen." Isolde met his gaze, understanding the depth behind the words. The night had tested them, challenged them, pushed them to their limits. But it had also forged something unbreakable: trust, courage, and the first flicker of love. They stood together in the moonlight, hands intertwined, hearts beating in quiet unison. The shadows of the ballroom and the whispers of the past felt distant now, replaced by a profound awareness. They had faced danger and emerged stronger, not just because of skill or strategy, but because they had chosen to face it together. Arendor leaned slightly closer, his voice a whisper meant only for her. "Whatever comes next, you will not face it alone. That is my promise." Isolde's lips curved into a faint, genuine smile. "And I will not run," she said softly. "Not from danger, not from trust, not from you." The moonlight glinted on the marble balcony, casting long, intertwining shadows that seemed to echo the bond between them. The night, once a mere backdrop to a wedding, had become a crucible of transformation, testing courage, loyalty, and the willingness to open one's heart. And as the first soft light of dawn touched the edges of the city, Isolde realized something profound. She had found not just protection, not just safety, but a connection that promised redemption, desire, and a future shaped by choice rather than circumstance. The ballroom below stirred with guests, unaware of the quiet victory that had unfolded on the balcony. But Isolde and Arendor stood together, hands entwined, ready to face the world and whatever shadows it might cast side by side. The night had ended, but their story was only beginning. And in that beginning, there was hope, courage, and the quiet certainty that even in darkness, hearts could find light.